Piers Morgan doesn't understand the difference between a normative and a descriptive claim. Let's educate him, shall we? In an interview which aired on March 8, 2017, Piers Morgan and co-host Susanna Reid of Good Morning Britain attempted to ambush Polish MEP Janusz Korwin-Mikke with a whole lot of emotional reactions and misrepresentation of Korwin-Mikke's statements. Throughout the interview, Reid and Morgan routinely stumble over a distinction with which even the most junior of ethics students should be familiar. However, seeing as they work as talk show anchors, I don't really expect them to have the best grasp on fundamental ethical concepts.
How does that make you feel?
Alright, old memes aside, before we get into the video play-by-play, I'd like to bring everyone up to speed on the distinction between normative and descriptive claims. For this miniature lesson, I'm going to be reading from Jane Ann McLaughlin's Ethics in Action, Making Ethical Decisions in Your Daily Life, as published by Pearson Canada. Page 122, first paragraph of the text, reads as follows. Normative ethics means setting a norm, or standard, for ethical behavior and measuring people's behavior against that standard. Descriptive ethics, on the other hand, describes people's actual behavior and then explains why they behave in this way. The primary distinction here is that one standard, normative ethics, makes the claim that something should be a particular way, while the other, descriptive ethics, describes reality as it exists and then goes on to explain why that is. Knowing this, pay close attention to how Piers and Susanna each represent the Polish MEP's positions, and ask yourself the following questions. 1. Were Korwin-Mikke's statements originally of a normative or descriptive nature? And 2. Are Morgan and Reid representing Korwin-Mikke's statements in a normative or descriptive light? Another thing to bear in mind while listening to Janusz speak is that English is not his first language. If you're wondering why it is that I'm mentioning this fact, some of you may recall this scene from Modern Family. Others will simply have to be satisfied with the GIF and the subtitles. Of course, what's being said here is that while someone may be thinking in their native language, it does take a fair bit of effort to translate those thoughts into a second language, so they may not sound as intelligent when they speak, but by golly, while they're thinking it, they're fucking brilliant. Now, Korwin-Mikke is attempting to represent certain factual statements as can be verified by reference to numerous studies which eviscerate the modern myth of the gender pay gap being caused solely, or even primarily, by sexist factors. The unfortunate fact of the matter is that his English composition is somewhat insufficient, and leaves unintended gaps in phrasing which Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid seem more than happy to attempt to exploit. So yeah, normative versus descriptive claims, and complications due to English as a second language, something to which you would think a progressive bunch like the Good Morning Britain cast should be sympathetic. Anyway, roll the tape.
MEP Janusz Korwin-Mikke joins us now live from Warsaw in Poland.
Morning.
Welcome to you, sir. Can you explain to people in Britain, please, why you believe women should be paid less than men because they're weaker, smaller, and less intelligent?
And there you have it, folks. Right off the hop, Piers Morgan is already attempting to frame Korwin-Mikke's statements as normative rather than descriptive. He claims that the Polish MEP's position is that women should be paid less, whereas Korwin-Mikke's statements are that they are paid less based on numerous factors, which include the facts, the verifiable, undeniable facts, that women are, on average, physically weaker, of smaller stature, and fall more often in the average range than the exceptional range in terms of IQ than their male counterparts, on average. But don't let me tell you that. Don't let me tell you that Piers Morgan is doling out a massive crock of shit. No. Let Janusz tell you.
I am sorry, you are lying. I never said that the women should earn less. I only said that because they are shorter, they are weaker, they are less intelligent, they are less aggressive, and so on, they earn less.
Remember when I made note of the whole English as a second language issue earlier? It should be fairly clear now as to why I made that particular point. Janusz quite clearly needed to take a moment, presumably between the mild shock of being ambushed by TV hosts with such bold misinterpretations of his statements and the time needed to translate his subsequent thoughts into English for the benefit of said hosts, to compose himself before proceeding. This sort of tactic, abusing English not being someone's primary language, is the lowly sort of nonsense that makes me wish they'd simply sprung for a translator and provided the viewers with accurate subtitles. It's a cheap tactic that Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid will repeatedly abuse throughout this ambush of an interview, so I'll just make note of my disgust at their behavior now and forego repeating such sentiments as we roll on. Speaking of rolling on...
By the way, shorter men earn less than the tall men. The blonde earn more than the brunettes. There are differences, and the differences should not be equalized. That's all.
Now, as you will see from even a cursory viewing of Korwin-Mikke's statements in the European Parliament, he is something of a free market absolutist. He is of the opinion that the market forces should, in a vast majority of circumstances, be allowed to act on their own without arbitrary interference by governing bodies. In this case, he is stating that there are many factors that, in reality, have an effect on how much the average person will earn throughout their lifetime. Back-end adjustments should not be made to equalize what people earn, despite these differences. Korwin-Mikke, whom I will refer to as based MEP for the duration of this video, and for the dual sake of brevity and comedy, prefers to promote a basic equality of opportunity rather than the equality of outcome. Anybody should be able to apply for the job, the decision makers should be able to select their preferred applicant, and such businesses should live or die on the functional merits of such choices. Simple as that. Anyway, back to the interview. There's plenty more destruction of Morgan and Reid to be enjoyed. I mean, observed. But also enjoyed, let's be honest.
Can I just interrupt? Can you give me an example? Sorry.
Women are not shorter than men?
Okay, can you just give me an example of where a short man earns less than a tall man?
He can't, and he shouldn't have to because he's speaking about averages, but I can. The NBA. There you go. You want another one? Stocking shelves at a supermarket. If you can't reach the top shelf, guess what? You can't do that job. Height is simply an advantage in, well, a great number of various circumstances, and even when it's not essential to doing your job, it can still come in as a pretty decent advantage. So there you go. The NBA, stocking shelves, certain construction jobs, I'm betting it's far easier to reach certain spots and get certain things done. So even if he doesn't have an exact singular example on hand, I got two of them there for you. Let's move on.
And do you believe?
I didn't say that they should earn.
Okay.
I am a free marketer.
Let me ask you though. Do you personally?
I am free marketer.
Let me ask you.
And everybody earns.
Okay. Let me ask you. Do you personally believe that women are less intelligent than men?
Two things here, folks. Based MEP has pointed out here the difference between normative and descriptive statements and reasoning. Even if he hasn't said it in quite those terms, he's saying, well, I'm just a free marketer. It's not that they should. It's not that I believe a certain thing. It's that this is the reality of the situation. Second, we have Piers Morgan, of course, man-interrupting, if you will, on a very, very feminist show. But I guess he's man-interrupting another man, so that's okay. In any case, what he's interrupting to ask is whether or not based MEP believes that women are less intelligent than men on average. Now, you and I should both realize that what he believes, what his personal thoughts on the matter are, they don't matter. They don't matter at all. You see, what matters here is the data, and the data points out that women tend to bunch towards the middle, the median average, of IQ scores, whereas men have less of a bunch around the middle and tend to be more dispersed to the top and bottom end of the spectrum. Again, realize this means that while there are also more male geniuses, there are more male idiots on the spectrum, as, of course, that term will get brought up later in this interview. Let's carry on.
Yes, of course. Why are you not interested that they are shorter than men, but they are less intelligent? Both statements are true.
And there it is. He comes from the when questioned, double down on the facts school of argumentation. Piers is going to keep getting angry at the fact that he's pointed out one singular factual irregularity, that is, that women tend to bunch towards the middle as opposed to the top and bottom ends of the IQ spectrum. But he's going to completely ignore the fact they're also physically smaller and weaker on average. Again, Korwin-Mikke is only stating averages based on the entire population of humans on the face of the planet. He's not going into minutiae, into individual examples. Just the averages. But of course, Piers Morgan can't see that, and he's going to get very, very emotional because of it.
Do you understand that when you say that, you're basically telling
please,
them... Well, let me finish.
please.
Let me finish. Do you understand that when you say that on International Women's Day...
The day doesn't matter, and you know it doesn't matter. He could say this on any other day of the year, it would be just as valid, and you would still be just as pissed off about it. Well, maybe not. It probably wouldn't get as good of ratings on any other day, but you'd still act like an absolute child throwing a tantrum over it.
What you're really doing is showing the world that you are just a horrendous sexist pig.
Remember, folks, when the facts aren't on your side, you can always rely on ad hominems. Well done, Piers. Well done.
But, excuse me, why you are not interested that the women are shorter or weaker than men?
He's not interested because you can't tell just by looking at somebody whether or not they are smarter than somebody else. Piers Morgan doesn't want to argue the shorter or weaker fact because you can observe that just by looking at somebody. If you bring up the average IQ spans, well then, because it's not immediately observable, he can use emotion into making people believe what he wants them to believe. That's why he doesn't care about observable facts that he can see plainly with his two eyes. It's a losing battle.
But if women, okay, but let me ask you. Yeah, if women are less intelligent, let me finish.
Please
Shush. When you say women are less intelligent than men,
can you imagine having the brass balls required to tell your guest, somebody that your program has invited on, to shush like some sort of a 4-year-old child? That you want to interrupt them, you don't want to give them the time to translate their thoughts, think their stuff through, and then deliver it to you. You're going to tell a grown-ass man, a member of European Parliament, to shush as though he's your 2-year-old kid. Can you imagine having the absolute unmitigated gall to do that? Well, you probably can't, because odds are, viewer, you're a decent person. But Piers Morgan here, well, Piers doesn't have any of those ethical or moral quandaries to worry about. He knows that he's on the right side of history, as it were, and he's going to do whatever the hell he damn well feels like during this interview, unprofessional as it may be.
Sorry, I was talking.
How can you say that women are less intelligent than men when you yourself sound so unbelievably stupid?
Yeah, we're just gonna roll on back to this GIF for a minute because I think it's rather poignant. I think it applies rather well to this point in the conversation. Piers, you are interrupting the man while he's trying to translate his thoughts from Polish into English for your benefit, for the ease of you being able to translate it into your brain from reality to whatever the status you live in happens to be. That's why he is sounding, as you might put it, stupid. That's why he is fumbling over some of his words. Because English is not his first language, you know it, and you are not giving him the time to compose his statements completely. Let's move on.
I haven't understood you.
Well, because you're too stupid. Let me try again.
Seriously, folks, the brass fucking balls on this man. I can't believe it. I wouldn't dream of acting like this. But, you know, I'm not an international TV host.
Right? How can you say that women are less intelligent than men when you are saying such incredibly stupid things?
Why?
Yeah, how can you say that when you yourself say such stupid things?
Piers, I don't think it's quite appropriate or wise to be claiming that somebody else in the conversation is stupid when you can't tell the difference between an individual example and a median. That's just me, but I wouldn't be tripping over that landmine.
First of all, I haven't heard you. Okay, it is you are saying it's stupid. It is scientifically proved, and you say that what is scientists determined, you say it is stupid thing. No, well, it only shows that you are an idiot.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and bring this back.
How does that make you feel? What?
Based MEP just called out Piers Morgan on Good Morning Britain for being a science denialist, which is what he's being. He is disputing the fact that these IQ differences exist on average. They exist. Piers Morgan just doesn't want to recognize them because, well, again, it flies in the face of his narrative. Unfortunate as that might be, sorry Piers, you gotta face the facts, pal.
Who don't believe in science, that's all. And please, don't mix up. Don't mixing up. Women are less intelligent than men, but nobody said that the men are wiser than women. Oh no, I think it is just the opposite. Just tell me the example. A 15-year boy is usually much more intelligent than his mother. But his mother is more wise than he is. So, to be wise, it is a different thing. Intelligence is a feature to enable you to solve the crosswords, to invent the atomic bomb, and so on and so on. And it is quite different things that to be wise.
Susanna, would you like to speak to this gentleman who thinks that women are basically less intelligent?
Yes, Piers. Ask your co-host if she would like permission to go on and address the claims, or the factual statements, of based MEP. Go ahead, just ask her if she wants to join into the conversation. Don't expect her to assert herself and interrupt on her own accord, although maybe she's simply more polite than both you and Janusz, who knows. Though I think we'll see rather shortly here, maybe she just doesn't feel like interrupting. Maybe she just wants to hear out both sides and then come at it from a reasonable and objective point of view. I think you and I can both take a guess here and figure out that she's probably not. But again, you don't need to prompt her to speak up. When you do, it rather looks like you're trying to hide behind her skirt and use her as a shield. Oh, but I have a woman who wants to say something. Haha, I've trumped you now. I have a woman who wants to say something. Get bent, Piers Morgan. Get bent.
I feel like I've kind of been rendered
Sorry, the lady is about to speak. If that's all right with you. We have quite a short lady who I think might take exception to almost everything you've just said. So,
well,
Susanna.
I find it absolutely fascinating. Can I just establish your credentials? You're a member of the European Parliament, is that right?
Told ya. We have a woman who wants to speak. We have a short woman who wants to speak. We have a person with a uterus who demands to speak on this issue. Because I was failing so horribly at defending my own position, so please mommy help, is effectively what Piers Morgan has just said. And now she's going to challenge him on being an MEP for some reason. Let's see where this goes.
Yes, but it makes any difference whether I'm a member of European Parliament or not.
Well, it kind of does, because you have a very powerful voice, and I'm sort of astonished by what you're saying, because I mean it's fantastic that you think that women are wiser than men, but to argue that there is a scientific basis for women being less intelligent as men sounds like utter nonsense, frankly.
And would that sound like utter nonsense because you simply can't understand how median IQ ranges work? Or do you understand how they work and it sounds like nonsense because your narrative demands that it sounds like nonsense? Again, I encourage anybody watching this, go look up the median IQs of men and women. That is what he is referring to in all of this. That's where you're going to get your information. And again, he specifies that whereas men may be more intelligent on average than women, he does leave out the fact that yes, they are more idiotic, less intelligent in some cases than women. But again, they group more to the high and low end of the spectrum than in the middle. Women tend to group in the middle. Go ahead, look it up, I'll wait. You can just put this on pause, head over to Google, type in average IQ ranges of men and women, and find yourself 12 validated studies explaining that this is fact and not simply supposition. Alright, I've waited, let's move on.
And what I don't understand, while I would agree that in cases that women are physically weaker than men...
Susanna, you have already shown yourself to be more competent and more suited for this role than Piers. Piers Morgan can't even bring himself to acknowledge the fact that women are physically smaller and weaker on average than their male counterparts. You can at least acknowledge that in some instances, apparently. So let's see where you're going to go with this, because, again, you've demonstrated at least a slight bit of a greater comprehension of how reality is actually represented. Let's roll on.
I don't understand how you can possibly justify a pay gap on the fact that women are shorter than men. Because whatever your argument, that is just complete rubbish.
How tall are you?
5'4".
Right, there we go.
Oh, very good then. Check and mate, was it, Piers? I don't happen to see it that way, but of course you're entitled to your own interpretation of reality. You've been showing that since the start of the interview. Now, again, I will bring up the fact that why should it be that how can you justify a pay gap when a woman is shorter than a man? How can you justify such a thing? The NBA. There, you want one example? The NBA. Any other situation where it requires reaching up to a high thing. If a business has to pay extra money to, say, grab a whole bunch of fucking step stools and throw them around the place as opposed to just having taller individuals working, I don't know, seems more effective just to have the taller folks who don't need the extra apparatus to get the job done. But again, that's just me. Not like I have a background in any sort of business management or economics or, marketing and in business-to-business sales. Not like I have any sort of a background in the pertinent fields here. No, that would be silly. Not like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to putting together a business plan and knowing what you would like to pay for and what you wouldn't like to pay for, and then how to get around those things if you need to. In any event, this has been an absolute dog's breakfast of an interview. It goes on to be rather hilarious, and I do recommend you watch the entire thing just, if only, to see how ridiculous Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid are really capable of being. But I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to say thank you to everyone who subscribes and likes and watches the videos. Thanks for all your support, and especially top-notch thank yous to all of my patrons for supporting me as we go forward. Hopefully this video has been a touch above the rest. I realize that Sargon made a recent video on this, and it's actually what inspired this video. The issue was that I didn't think Sargon did as good of a job as pointing out the whole normative versus descriptive statements and reasoning thing. He goes on to really dance around it. He seems to be right on the fact, but doesn't quite name it or flesh it out very well. He tends to just make a whole lot of mockery of Piers and Susanna, which is easy. Don't get me wrong, did it myself. It's some fun shit. But it really does require that we take a look at the difference between normative and descriptive statements. Because if you look into, I would dare say, most arguments between people who advocate for the equality of opportunity versus the equality of outcome, you will see the different arguments being based on descriptive and normative terms. Well, things should be this way, or this is how things are, deal with it. But I want things to be this way. This is how things ought to be in my subjective perception of the world. You're going to see that a lot. So the next time somebody comes at you with some normative bullshit, give them the descriptive. Give them how it is, what reality represents, and let them suck it up. Because they don't really have a choice. They can say, oh, it should be this, it should be that, until the cows come home and they're blue in the face, till every idiom and analogy has been exhausted. Alright? But it's never going to be worth, alright, a plum nickel. Yeah, I'm going to start throwing out the really old references here. It ain't going to be worth a plum nickel. Alright? When the fact is that reality doesn't see things the way they do. Anyways, folks, this has been JT Viper. Another video. Have a good one. And thank you all for watching.